With Ys IX coming out in just 3 weeks, the burning question on everybody's mind who's looking to get into the franchise is, can I start with Ys IX as my first entry? What am I going to be missing out on by not playing the other entries? Like any long-running franchise, it can be a daunting task to find the right entry to start with, especially when it continues a story or has recurring characters, much like the Ys franchise does. The easy answer to this question is yes, you can play Ys IX as your first, and I would recommend doing so. But you're probably like me, wondering how these games are all connected, where they fit into the timeline, and how much each game is connected to one another. If you clicked on this video, you're probably in the same boat I was when I started looking at Ys VIII, unaware of how to answer these aforementioned questions. Ys IX is a relatively small series in the West, so it can be hard to find information regarding the series, its lore, and how it connects. When I took the plunge into the series, it was my goal to make sure I could educate people on the series so they didn't run into the same roadblocks as I did when I was first looking to get into it. So sit back, relax, subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about some Ys. First off, as I stated, Ys IX can most certainly be played as your first entry, and I would highly recommend doing so. Do not let this video and the lore discussed below dissuade you from doing so either. Though the game is connected with a wider lore, each story in itself is self-contained. Think of it much like the Legend of Zelda franchise. Each game is connected to one another and makes references to terms, goddesses, characters, areas, and landmarks, but each can be played separately, understood separately, and most importantly, enjoyed separately without knowledge of the prior games. That's the beauty of the Ys series, and one of the things setting it apart from Falcom's other flagship franchise, The Legend of Heroes. If you want a breakdown of the series as a whole, check out the awesome website Digital Elmolus, linked down below in the description. These guys were a huge asset to me when I was looking to get into the Ys franchise and how things are connected. They're a wholesome community, and I've really enjoyed being able to get a chance to know them. The Ys games take place in a timeline cataloging the adventures across Adol's life. There is an exception to this, but more on this later. You would expect the release order and chronological order to be one and the same, but that's not the case. The first game chronologically in order is Ys Origin. Ys Origin is a prequel to the series and is set 700 years before the events of the first chronological game following Adol's adventures, Ys I. Ys Origin follows the events of the fall of Ys and elaborates on such groups and races such as the Eldeen and the Darklings. This is the only game in the series where Adol is not the protagonist. Instead, it follows the events of 3 protagonists, Unica, Hugo, and the Claw. Because this is a prequel to the series, I don't recommend playing this as your first entry if you plan on playing them all. I'll explain why when we talk about Ys II, but Origins is the last game to also use the Napishtim engine gameplay, which used a mixture of action-based combat and platforming, much like the isometric Zelda games of the past. It is also the last game to feature playing as one character at a time, as the next entry in the franchise would introduce a party-based combat system, which we will talk about later. Each game is set up as an interpretation or a retelling of certain journal entries from Adol's life. Ys I is the very first entry that we get to see our protagonist, Adol, introduced. He travels through the land of Asteria as he stumbles across the lore surrounding the lost city of Ys and decides to investigate it. During this time, he meets up with a group of bandits where he meets his longtime friend and traveling companion, Dogi. They make their way up Darm Tower to stop Darkfact releasing demons from the ancient past. Book 2 is bundled with Book 1 and chronicles Adol's adventures through the lost city of Ys, and without spoiling too much, it will uncover the mysteries that happened 700 years earlier. This is why I said in my Ys Origins section that I can't recommend playing Ys Origins first, because 1 and 2 will be spoiled and a lot of the mystery won't be a surprise anymore if you play that game by itself. The only problem with this game solely depends on your tolerance for older gameplay designs, as Ys 1 and 2 are the only canonical games to use the bump system combat from the days of old, where you do damage by bumping into your enemies. The game is bundled together with Ys Chronicles and can be purchased on Steam or for a hefty price for a PSP physical release. If you want my review, be sure to check out my review in the cards above. Memories of Celceta is the 4th game in the series, but chronologically the 3rd game to follow the adventures of Adol. Adol's adventures take him to the land of Celceta, where events happen that lead him to lose his memory. It is here Adol will rescue a couple of miners from a monster attack inside the mine, catching the eye of the commanding officer of the Roman Empire, General Griselda. Once he and Durin talk to her, she tasks him and Durin with mapping out the Celcetan forest. It is here that Adol will recover his memories and learn of the events of the Darklings in Eldin, and learn of many more of the artifacts that the Eldin would use. Ys IV becomes even more interesting though, because there are 3 games based on Ys IV. If you only care about what is canonical though, Memories of Celceta is the only canonical version, as it is a remake of Ys IV reimagined by Falcom themselves. For those curious though, back in the day, Falcom had 2 versions of Ys IV, the first being Mask of the Sun, which was developed by Tonkin House for the SNES and was considered the canonical entry up until Memories of Celceta replaced it on the timeline. The other version, made by Hudson Soft, called Dawn of Ys, is considered by many fans to be the best version of Ys IV. Both Dawn of Ys and Mask of the Sun would use the bump system from 1 and 2. These games share similar elements but catalog events differently depending on the version you're playing. It may include new areas or different characters. Memories of Celceta even pokes fun at this by stating that this is just one interpretation of the events that took place in Celceta, but make no mistake, Memories of Celceta is the canonical version of Ys IV. Memories of Celceta would go on to use the party-based combat system introduced in Ys VII. Though Memories of Celceta is the only Ys IV game we have reviewed on this channel, which you can check out in the aforementioned playlist, I do have plans to review Dawn of Ys and Mask of the Sun at some point on this channel. The next game chronologically on the timeline is Oath In Felghana. Though this is the 3rd game in this series, it takes place directly after the events of Memories of Celceta and catalogs Adol's and Dogi's adventures through Felghana, Dogi's homeland. In Oath In Felghana, we are introduced to the threat of Galbalan, an ancient demon reawakened in the land of Felghana to destroy the land. This is tied into the Eldin lore, but how I won't spoil, and I will instead let you figure out the mystery yourself. Like Ys IV though, Ys III did receive a remake, this being the canonical entry, Oath In Felghana. There is one other game which is considered a far less superior version called Wanderers from Ys. This would use a more 2D style, much in the veins of Metroid or Castlevania, or if you are familiar with other Falcom titles, Xanadu and Legacy of the Wizard. Like Memories of Celceta, Oath In Felghana is the only version of 3 I have reviewed, and I do have plans to review Wanderers of Ys at some point for the channel. Oath In Felghana would be the 2nd game to use the Napishtim engine combat. The next canonical game in the franchise is Ys V Lost Kefin Kingdom of Sand. This is an interesting game, and I highly recommend checking out my review as it's one I am quite proud of. It had some elements I did enjoy despite being my least favorite within the series. Ys V is often regarded the black sheep of the series, mainly for being a very experimental title, and it would attempt to move the series into a more action-based combat the series uses today. There are arguments online as to whether or not it is still considered canon, as it is the only Ys game to not receive a remake by Falcon themselves. Ys V is still very much canon, make no mistake about that, and we will briefly touch upon this during the coverage of Ys VIII. Ys V, though, follows the events of Adal through Xandria, a city in the continent of Africa. Adal's adventures will lead him into finding the lost city of Kefin. This seems to be an isolated event and has no ties to previous Eldin or any other titles establishing lore within the franchise. I think that they would most likely fit this into the religion of Africa, tritheism, the ancient religion that makes an appearance in Ys VII and VIII. If you are looking to play this game, it's going to be very difficult. As of the making of this video, as previously mentioned, it is the only game in the series to not receive a remake. As it stands, it was never released outside of Japan. The only way to play this in English is to use the SNES translation patch by Aeon Genesis. I can't recommend playing this title, but if you are genuinely curious about it, I'm not going to tell you not to do so. The next chronological entry is Ys VIII. Adal and Dogi are making their way back to Asteria from Xandria. This is why Ys V is considered canonical. For one, Adal also starts out with the blade acquired from Xandria at the end of Ys V. During this time on the Lombardia, him and Dogi would earn their place on the ship by helping the captain out in various different ways. After a night party goes horribly wrong, a giant squid attacks, sinking the ship and stranding them on the Isle of Saren. They must now find a way to uncover its secrets and find a way to get off of the island. Ys VIII continues to use the combat established in Ys VII and is the best version of the party-based combat to this day. I won't spoil Ys VIII's story, but it has me curious how they are going to play the series lore going forward. If you're curious about my thoughts, check out my review in the card above. Spoiler, it's my favorite in the series. The next canonical game in the series is Ys VI Ark of Napishtim. This followed the shipwrecked adventures of Adal on the Isle of Canon, establishing a brand new race called the Reda and lore combining the past games together. This was the first conscious effort by Falcom to make the lore connect together. As it stands, this is the last entry on the timeline to have anything to do with the Eldin and their artifacts. The story is actually really good and is one of my favorites from the series. This would be the first game to establish the Napishtim engine combat, perfecting the series. This would be the first game to also use the action-based combat that they were striving for in Ys V. It was also credited with revitalizing the series. If you want a more detailed review of the game, we also have that here on the channel. As it stands right now, Ys VII, as of the making of this video, is the last game on the timeline. This is going to change though when Ys IX releases in 3 weeks. This entry would see Adal's travels through the land of Altago on the continent of Africa. It is here Adal will learn about the 7 ancient dragons and receive their blessing to save the land of Altago from its ultimate demise. This was the first game to introduce tritheism, the religion that is practiced on Africa. Ys VII was also the first game to introduce the party combat system the series is using right now. This would mainstream it and focus it more on strategy through battle, being able to switch your party members for different attacks. It really takes inspiration from Tales in the Star Ocean when it comes to its combat. Though not my favorite in the series, I do think it is worth playing for the story itself. You can check out my full review of Ys VII in the card above. I do not know much about Ys IX as of the making of this video, as I have been trying to remain far away from spoilers as possible. But what I do know is Ys IX does take place after the events of Altago, making it the game that takes place the furthest on the timeline. It follows the events of Adal through the prison city of Balduc, and that is about all of the information that I know, of course, until we are able to play it on the channel. And I'm very much looking forward to being able to experience that game with all of you, along with all of the Ys fans that I have met over the course of my reviews. So look forward to my Ys IX review when it comes out, and if you're watching this video after Ys IX has released, the review may or may not already be up. The last game we are going to talk about is Ys Strategy. This is a spin-off game and is not even considered canon within the series. A lot of fans and a lot of my resources who I've talked to about the game have said that it's not even worth playing. All it does is take a bunch of characters from Ys and loosely kind of ties it into an RTS game that honestly just isn't worth your time. It has no connection to the story, no place in the canon, so most fans wouldn't blame you if you just decided to skip this title entirely. I'm sure being a newcomer, all of this seems very overwhelming, but do not let this discourage you from trying out this series. Playing with Ys IX first is not going to be a problem. If anything, it's going to spark your interest in the series if you are looking to get into it. If you like Ys IX and like what you've played, I recommend trying out Ys VIII first, as it is a very satisfactory title and my favorite in the franchise. Memories of Celceta is also a good place to start, as that is also available on the PlayStation 4. All of the games except for Lost Kefin Kingdom of Sand are available on Steam as well, so you can purchase the entire Ys series on Steam. If you are looking for a good Napishtim engine game to play, I would recommend Oath In Felghana. This is my second favorite game in the franchise and my favorite game to use the Napishtim engine combat, as it would be the best in my opinion for combat wise when it came to the single character combat system used in the Napishtim engines. I hope this video was able to shine some light on the Ys franchise. I hope that it was able to help you understand how these games are connected and where they fit in on the timeline. As I stated, it's a very daunting task when taking a look at the series and realizing it's all connected. And being in that position myself a couple of years ago when I decided to take the plunge, I wanted to make this video to ultimately help people understand where these games connected, how they were connected, and give them a better understanding, because there's not a lot of resources online that do so. Again, Digital MLS is going to be a great way to get information regarding the Ys franchise. They are an awesome community and I recommend checking them out. If you like what you see, hit subscribe, ring that bell notification so you don't miss my videos when they go live. Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, all that fun stuff. All those links to my social media are going to be down below in the description box. You guys have been watching Gaming with Spoons, and most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. Spoons is checking out.